All right, I want to come back to your diet. Right now, you're in a unique phase where you're cutting weight, having about 2 pounds of meat a day. I often see you on social media with a big steak in front of you. How much of the diet, that 2 pounds of meat right now, is beef?
Oh, pretty much all of it. Yeah, I'm about as close to over the last, I don't know, gosh, I'm in my ninth year of this. And so over the last 9 years, I've probably consumed, without exaggeration, like 10,000 steaks. I mean, I'm just not even exaggerating. That is a real number because I would eat 3, sometimes 4 a day, 365 days a year for 9 years. That's about 10,000. So, yeah, I mean, it's all, I very rarely eat anything other than beef. I mean, like I said, like we talked about, I will have some eggs from time to time. I'll have a little bit of dairy from time to time. Every once in a while, I'll have some seafood. Every once in a while, I'll have, pork or something like that. But that's pretty much the diet for the most part. I don't eat a lot of chicken. Most people that go carnivore, chicken just does not have much of an appeal to it. And I think it's just because of the fat content. That's why the American Heart Association promotes things like chicken, because low in saturated fat. And interestingly, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the news. I know that Marty Makary, the head of the FDA, just announced that, in conjunction with Kennedy, at the HHS, and Brooke Rollins, the USDA secretary, are saying, hey, we're going to relook at saturated fat. And I think the new dietary guidelines that will come out in about 2 or 3 months are going to say that saturated fat in the context of whole unprocessed food like meat, milk, eggs, and so on and so forth is not an item of concern. Whereas, in previous years, since 1980, they've said cap your saturated fat at 10% of your diet or some arbitrary number like that, realizing that most of the saturated fat that Americans and probably Canadians get is through ultra-processed food, desserts, things like that. That's where most of the, beef in the United States only represents about 3% of our saturated fat consumption, which is kind of crazy. So all this other stuff, this kind of garbage food that we're eating, like, if you make a cake, well, what do you put in? You put eggs and you put dairy products in there. And so, yes, it's high in saturated fat, but it's cake. It's just like, okay, well, there's a difference between a cake and a steak, clearly, from a nutritional standpoint and satiety and everything else.
All right, so you're a big beef guy. You like your steaks. How much diversity within the steak realm, different cuts do you switch between? And then what about ground beef?
I think ground beef is absolutely wonderful. It is a very versatile product. I think it's tremendously nourishing. I mean, the only con that I see for ground beef at some time is, when you get a lot of rendered fat, like if you fry it up in a pan, you have a lot of grease in there. Some people, the rendered fat just doesn't sit well in the gut as well as a whole unprocessed, unrendered fat like a steak might. I eat a lot of ribeye steaks. I mean, that's probably the number one thing I eat, but I tend to gravitate towards, the fattier cuts of meat, whether it's ribeye or picanha or brisket or, some of these aren't as fat, but, skirt steaks and T-bones and New Yorks and things like that. I eat a fair bit of ground beef. And the reason for that is, again, my energy is fat. That's what fuels my exercise and my day activities. If I don't get enough fat, I just feel tired. So I gotta consume adequate fat to run the machine effectively. And so if I had to eat a diet of chicken breast and lean fish and very lean red meat, I would be hungry all the time and I would not be satisfied.
And how do you spread that out throughout a day? Are you a 1 meal a day guy? 2 meals? How does that look?
Traditionally, it's been 2 meals a day. That has been my experience most of the time. And I can certainly get it all in one meal. I can eat. I'm a guy that can sit down and eat 3 or 4 pounds of steak in one sitting. I don't enjoy the last 1 pound of that, for instance. So I like to enjoy my meals. A lot of people can't do 1 meal a day just because they can't eat enough. I mean, 1 meal and they just run out of energy. So I see a lot of people, they want to go, I'm going to fast for 23 hours a day and I'm going to eat OMAD and yeah, I'm going to lose weight the first week. And then 2 weeks later, they're like, I got no energy. I'm tired. I'm awful. And I'm like, we're just not eating enough. And so I, like most people that do a carnivore diet, eat twice a day, and I would say that's probably more, I don't know, the majority of people end up eating about twice a day.
And when it comes to spices, salt, what are you using in that realm?
I use primarily just salt for me personally, but I'm not like if you want to put some, pepper and garlic on there or whatever. I mean, there's some people do have a sensitivity to those things. So I think we have to be mindful and respectful that some people do struggle with those things. I personally don't. I just prefer the taste of salt. I think it just tastes good. I don't really necessarily, I don't mind if I go out and there's a little bit of seasoning on the meat. I don't mind it at all. Sometimes it tastes nice, but I don't really do a lot of that. And honestly, I feel better without it, quite honestly, but it's not like a huge negative for me. It's like, it tastes good. Enjoy the meal. Maybe you can kind of just get the impression that it's still sitting in your gut a little bit longer. But again, I just have to say, you got to live in a real world day to day. And if you've got some horrible autoimmune condition or Crohn's disease or something like that, where a little bit of spice is going to really destroy you, then you got to avoid those things.
If you enjoyed that clip, you're going to want to head over here and catch a full episode. I'll see you over there.
The last 9 years, I've probably consumed, without exaggeration, like 10,000 steaks. That was one of the things that struck me 10 years ago when I first went carnivore. It was like, I don't even know my digestive system's working because I don't feel anything. I have no perception of digestion.